My name is Jim Hayes, and last weekend, I watched 350. People applaud while my daughter introduced another man as her father. That's right. A stranger stood in my place smiling for the cameras, while I sat alone at a table near the kitchen. And to make it sting worse, I was the one who paid for every crystal glass and every flower in that ballroom. Imagine your own child telling an entire room you're gone, while the man she calls dad hugs her under chandeliers you paid for. $500,000 of my money built that fairy tale wedding, and the only thing she gave me in return was humiliation. But what my daughter Victoria didn't realize was simple. Every single contract, every vendor, every payment, all of it was signed by me. And in my pocket sat the final check, $340,000, the one payment that could keep her dream wedding running. I raised her for 26 years, planned that wedding for 6 months, and in one moment of betrayal, everything changed. What happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. And neither did the polished crowd of Greenwich socialites, who thought they were better than a plumber in a rented tuxedo. Before I tell you how it ended, let me ask you something. Have you ever stood invisible in a room full of people celebrating something you made possible? If you've ever been taken for granted by your own blood, you'll understand why that night I finally decided to remind my daughter who built the life she was ashamed of. It was a summer evening at the Ashford Estate, Greenwich, Connecticut. Rows of Bentleys and black Mercedes glided up the drive like a parade of privilege. My old 2019 Ford F-150 looked like it had taken a wrong turn. The valet boy couldn't have been older than 20. He eyed my truck like I'd parked a delivery van at a royal gala. But he still took the keys. The tux I rented from Men's Warehouse scratched at my neck. $89 for the day, while the men around me wore custom suits that moved like silk. But I wasn't here to fit in. I was here to finish paying for the most expensive lie of my life. Inside, crystal chandeliers worth more than my first house sparkled above 350 of Connecticut's richest families. The guest list looked like a directory of old money, names that had hospitals and libraries attached to them. And there, moving through the crowd in her $32,000 Vera Wang gown, was my daughter Victoria. She saw me. Our eyes met, and then she looked away, quick, guilty, pretending I wasn't even there. A wedding planner with a clipboard appeared. "You must be, let's see, table 18, she said without looking up. Table 18, beside the kitchen door, where waiters rushed by carrying trays, where you could hear the hum of the sound system, where families seat the relatives they have to invite but don't want anyone to notice." "That's me," I replied. Victoria's new family, the Whitmore clan, were seated front and center. Her groom, Preston Whitmore III, came from a dynasty that owned half of Fairfield County's commercial buildings. Their wealth was so old it practically had dust on it. From my corner, I watched Victoria laugh and pose for photos, pretending she belonged in their world. Whenever anyone asked about her father, she gestured proudly toward an older gentleman with silver hair and a tailored tuxedo. "Richard Morrison," she'd say, the man she was introducing as her dad. I'd never seen him before in my life. Meanwhile, my table filled with distant cousins and random +1s, nice people, but no one the society page would ever mention. We made small talk about the weather, pretending we didn't notice how far we were from the spotlight. 26 years. That's how long I'd raised her. Every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every Christmas morning. I'd missed only 3 birthdays, all because of plumbing emergencies I couldn't ignore. Burst pipes don't wait for convenient times, but I always made it up to her. I paid for her private school when public school got rough, $14 grand a year. Paid for Yale, $68,000 a year, 4 years straight. Paid for her Manhattan apartment when she couldn't find work, $3 grand a month, 2 years. And now I was paying for this circus. Venue rental, $180,000. Catering, $85,000. Flowers, $28,000. String quartet from the New York Philharmonic, $15,000. Photographer, $12,000. 7-tier cake, $8,500. Every dream detail she wanted, courtesy of the father she pretended was dead. But here's the part she didn't bother reading. All those contracts had my name on them. The fine print made me the sole financial guarantor, which meant one thing. Without my signature, the show couldn't go on. As cocktail hour dragged, the distance between us felt wider than the ballroom itself. I watched her smile for photographers, watched her bask in admiration from people who'd never worked a real day in their lives. If I stayed quiet, I'd be teaching her that shame pays better than gratitude. 30 years of building Hayes Plumbing and Property Solutions taught me one thing: respect has to be earned, not inherited. I'd started in 1994 with a second-hand van, a rusted toolbox, and more grit than sense. 16-hour days, 7 days a week, peanut butter sandwiches for dinner. But I listened to people. The lawyer with the leaky faucet was selling his office. I bought it, fixed it, rented it, then another and another. Now we own 23 properties. Last year's revenue, $8.9 million. And yet to my daughter, I was still the plumber, the man with grease on his hands who didn't fit her fancy world. She never realized her embarrassing. Dad had more assets than half the people clinking champagne glasses in that room. But sitting quietly while she erased me, that would have been the real failure. Because sometimes the only way to teach respect is to stop paying for the illusion. The ballroom buzzed with laughter, but not around my table. While the Whitmores toasted champagne under the chandeliers, I sat surrounded by half-empty glasses and polite silence. Then one familiar face appeared. Margaret Henderson, a client whose basement I'd saved from flooding just last winter. Her eyes widened when she spotted me. "Jim Hayes, I didn't expect to see you here," she said cheerfully. "Father of the bride," I replied with a smile that barely hid the sting. Her smile faltered. You could see the realization hit. The math didn't add up. The words, "father of the bride," echoed just loud enough for the tables nearby to catch it, and suddenly the air shifted. Whispers spread through the room like spilled wine soaking into a white tablecloth. "That's the plumber?" someone murmured. "Wait! I thought Victoria's dad passed away." By the time dessert forks clinked, the entire ballroom knew the truth. The dead father was sitting by the kitchen doors, alive well, and apparently footing the bill. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The crowd did the talking for me. At the head table, Preston Whitmore Sr., the groom's father, finally noticed the growing tension. He was the kind of man who could smell gossip from a mile away. Tall, silver-haired, every inch of him polished by wealth and entitlement. He approached me with a smile so smooth it could have been printed on a banknote. "You must be Jim," he said, offering a manicured hand. "Preston Whitmore. We've heard so much about you." Polite lie. Victoria had clearly told them nothing. "Have we met before?" he asked, studying me. "Last March," I replied evenly. "Emergency plumbing call. Your kitchen sink burst the morning of your charity brunch." His smile froze for a split second before returning. "Ah, yes. Excellent work, by the way. You're quite the practical man. Not successful. Not accomplished. Practical." The word stung like I was a wrench he'd borrowed, useful but forgettable. He patted my shoulder and walked off, but the damage was already done. Half the room had seen it, the rich patriarch acknowledging the help. Across the ballroom, Victoria's smile cracked. Her cheeks flushed red, then drained white. She whispered something sharp to her husband, Preston III. He followed her gaze straight to me, his expression turning cold and calculating. The music kept playing, but the rhythm of the room changed. The air felt heavier, filled with polite discomfort. People didn't know whether to keep celebrating or pretend they didn't see the train wreck about to happen. Then came Catherine Brooks, the venue manager, the only person there who truly knew the power balance. She approached with two assistants in dark suits, their earpieces glinting under chandelier light. "Mr. Hayes," she said carefully, "could we have a quick word?" We stepped aside near a marble column draped in orchids. "Sir, the catering staff needs confirmation of the remaining balance. $340,000. The contract specifies payment before service begins." I nodded, pulling out my phone. The account balance glowed on the screen, digits that would make most people dizzy. Below it, the scheduled transfer, set for 9:15 p.m. "Not a minute sooner." "There's no problem," I said calmly, "as long as everything meets the standards we agreed on." Catherine hesitated. She'd been in this business long enough to smell trouble before it erupted. "Of course," she said finally. "Everything will be perfect." Her tone said something else. "We'll treat you like the client, not the guest." As she walked away, I noticed her assistants still watching me. Not the groom, not the Whitmores, me. because they knew the truth the rich folks didn't. In business, the name on the check always outranks the name on the invitation. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. A message from Victoria. "Daddy, please don't talk about the plumbing business tonight. It's important to me. 30 years of sacrifice are reduced to an inconvenience." That text hit harder than any insult I'd ever heard. I looked around the ballroom at the chandeliers. The flowers flown in from Hawaii. The guests sipping champagne worth more than a week's wage. All paid for by the man she didn't want to be associated with. That was the moment I decided. If she wanted to live in a world built on lies, I'd show her how quickly that world could collapse. Across the room, Preston III started walking toward me, the groom, 30 years younger, with the kind of confidence only inherited wealth could buy. His handshake was limp, his smile all charm and condescension. "Sir, I just wanted to thank you," he said. "Victoria is truly incredible." "She is," I agreed. "She's mentioned some of your challenges over the years," he added, lowering his voice. "Challenges, like working for a living was some kind of flaw." "We all have challenges," I replied, watching his smirk twitch. He went on, "Well, you can relax now. She'll never have to worry about money again. The Whitmore family takes care of its own." Its own, like my daughter had been adopted out of a lower class. "That's generous of you," I said, keeping my tone even. "Family means everything to us, blood or otherwise," he added with a smirk. The insult was surgical, subtle but deep. He turned and walked away, completely unaware that the man he just dismissed controlled every bill keeping his fantasy wedding alive. At that moment, my lawyer, Richard Paulson, caught my eye from across the room. He tapped his briefcase. Inside were all the documents, contracts, emails, payment receipts, proof that every penny of this event came from me. I nodded once. He understood. The time for quiet humiliation was over. The band began their next set, smooth jazz echoing through the chandeliers, while waiters wheeled in trays of steak medallions and champagne towers. The night looked perfect again, at least from a distance. But I wasn't watching the stage anymore. I was watching the clock. 9:14 p.m. 1 minute before the final payment was due. Beside me, my lawyer Richard checked his watch and whispered, "Once I cancel it, there's no reversing, Jim. They'll notice within minutes." I nodded. "That's the point." He didn't argue, just tapped his phone, sending a single command. Somewhere across the city, a transaction froze mid-transfer. 9:15 p.m. Payment canceled. At first, nothing happened. The band kept playing. Glasses clinked. Then, one by one, the servers began to slow down, whispers moving through their ranks like ripples in water. Catherine, the venue manager, appeared again, her calm demeanor cracking just slightly. "Mr. Hayes," she said carefully, "the system just flagged a hold on the payment. Should we—" I looked toward the dance floor, where Victoria and Preston were laughing with their guests. "No rush," I said quietly. "Let them enjoy the song." She hesitated, then nodded and disappeared toward the kitchen. Moments later, the chandeliers flickered. Music stuttered. A confused murmur rolled across the hall as the sound system cut out mid-beat. At the head table, the groom frowned. "What's happening?" Catherine hurried up the steps. "Sir, the payment for the event hasn't cleared. The system's auto-suspending all services until authorization." The entire room went silent. You could hear forks drop. The groom's father, Preston Sr., stood, his voice cutting through the quiet. "There must be a mistake. We can handle this." But before he could take a step, Catherine turned toward me. "Mr. Hayes, would you like to clarify how you'd like us to proceed?" 100 eyes swung in my direction. Victoria's face went pale. She knew exactly what was happening. I rose slowly from my chair. For a moment, the only sound was the creak of the wooden floor under my shoes. "Proceed as the contract states," I said calmly. "No payment, no service." Catherine nodded. "Understood." And just like that, the lights dimmed to half. The waiters stopped pouring. The band lowered their instruments. And the fairy tale froze mid-frame. Victoria rushed over, panic replacing her polished smile. "Dad, what are you doing?" "You're embarrassing me." I looked at her and my daughter, wearing a dress worth more than the house I raised her in. "Funny," I said softly. "That's how I felt when you told people I was dead." Her lips parted, but no words came out. The guests watched, hungry for the drama money couldn't hide. Preston III stepped forward, his confidence cracking. "Sir, we can fix this. I'll have my father transfer—" I raised a hand. "No need. This isn't about money anymore. This is about respect, something you can't buy." Preston Sr.'s jaw tightened. "Mr. Hayes, let's be adults about this." "I've been an adult since I was 18, I interrupted. "When I built my first business with tools, not stocks. When I worked 3 jobs, so your son could marry a woman who doesn't even carry my name with pride." Gasps rippled through the room. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. But they weren't from shame. They were from fear. Her perfect image was crumbling in front of everyone. I continued, my voice steady. "You called me a plumber in front of your friends, Victoria. You told them I was gone because I wasn't rich enough for your new life." I turned toward the guests. "But let me clear one thing for all of you. I paid for this entire wedding. Every chair, every flower, every drop of champagne." The room was dead silent. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop swaying. Then I pulled out my phone, showed the frozen transaction on screen, and said quietly, "And now it's all gone." Gasps. One woman dropped her glass. Preston's father's face turned the color of ash. Victoria whispered, trembling, "Dad, please don't do this." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the little girl who used to bring me coffee in the garage while I fixed engines. The memory hurt more than anything else. "I already did," I said softly. "You wanted to erase me, so I'm just giving you what you asked for. A life without me."